The Brooklyn Vegan Show is a podcast about music brought to you by the music blog and online record store Brooklyn Vegan. Make sure to subscribe to hear all of our upcoming episodes featuring interviews with musicians and more, and find us 24/7 at brooklynvegan.com, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Hey, welcome to the new episode of the Brooklyn Vegan Show. I'm BV editor Andrew Sacker, and today's episode is an interview with Matt and Nick from Citizen. Citizen's new record, Calling the Dogs, comes out Friday, October 6th on Run for Cover, and I think it's really one of their best records yet. Citizen are one of those bands who they're always kind of changing things up, and it's like just when people seem to get used to the new thing they did, they're on to something else. And Calling the Dogs is no exception, but I do think if you've been following their career the whole time since they put out Youth 10 years ago, that this one's a really rewarding record. It's kind of like, it is yet another step forward, another sort of left turn, but it feels like a culmination of everything they've done. And I think if you like any part of Citizen's career, especially if you like multiple parts of it, I feel like you're going to find something to like about this record. So I was really excited to get the chance to talk to Matt and Nick as the record approached its release. We talked a lot about the new record, about the band's upcoming tour. They reflected on the recent 10th anniversary shows for youth, and there's a lot of other cool stuff in there too. Before we get to the episode, just a quick heads up that listeners of the Brooklyn Vegan podcast can get 30% off their first year's membership to DistroKid. DistroKid is a service for musicians that allows you to easily upload your music to all major streaming platforms, including Spotify, Apple Music, and more. It allows you to do automatic revenue splits, so collaborators and co-writers can get paid too. It provides you with an artist page that links to your music on all streaming services. It allows you to add lyrics, credits, liner notes, and more. And again, you can get 30% off by signing up at distrokid.com/VIP/BrooklynVegan. We've also included the link in the description of this episode, and you can click directly from there. And Brooklyn Vegan is super excited to have an exclusive vinyl variant of Citizen's new record. It's available in the online Brooklyn Vegan shop, and that's also linked in the episode description below. So check that out, and here's my interview with Matt and Nick. So we've got Nick and Matt from Citizen with us. So just real quick, say your name so people can kind of put names to voices.
Hey, I'm Nick. I play guitar in Citizen.
And I'm Matt, and I do vocals in Citizen.
So you've got a great new record, Calling the Dogs, about to come out. But first, I want to talk about, you just celebrated the 10th anniversary of Youth with some shows. I caught the one at Knockdown Center. It was awesome. So tell me from your perspective, like, what was it like to revisit that classic record and, play those songs 10 years later at some of the biggest shows you've ever played?
Touching like specifically on that show. So that was the first show of the tour. And all of the shows were the biggest shows we've ever headlined. But something about that first one was just like so magical. And it kind of, in a way, didn't get recaptured at the other shows. And so, like, when I think they were all amazing, but like that first one was just, there's that factor that when you just play like one of your favorite shows ever, you feel it, and it doesn't really, you don't really know why, or like, you've played other shows that might have been crazier or whatever. And I don't know, that one just like had this factor to it that was, uh, I don't know, really, really special. That was a really cool show. Um,
It was our first time experiencing that moment too, and
yeah,
then after that, you've done it before, and with every single night, not that it gets less special, but it's just less like you know what to expect, and we didn't know what to expect. So night one specifically, it was pretty emotional and pretty magical, and it was just something totally new.
I mean, you could feel it in the crowd, I think, like that it was like a really special Citizen show.
yeah, absolutely. I feel like New York too. Just of course, we've played New York more than probably anywhere, and so I think that you get to a point that you're worried that you're worried that like people get sick of you in a way, and I don't know, that one just, it felt like a return to kind of like that feeling when we first started playing New York. There's just that magic feeling.
Yeah, for sure. And on that note too, like I think I might have said this in my review of the show, but something that's really just been sticking with me since that night is like seeing you play that record for like 3,000 people losing their minds. It's just like, aside from Warped Tour, like your first tour supporting that record was in New York, was like opening for Polar Bear Club at a 400 person room, and you didn't even do like a headlining tour on that record until like over a year later. And I just think it's kind of fascinating because it's like Youth is this classic record to so many people, but it's kind of fascinating to remember like what a slow build it really was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, still building and still moving slow. Like, um, I think we do that same tour 5 years ago. It's, half the size. Um, it really is just like kind of building and building. Every time we release something new, it kind of makes our like tail stronger, and that's definitely the case with Youth, which is really nice because a lot of records they burn bright right away, and then people are sick of them or whatever. And I feel like, Citizen has always in some ways been an underdog. We were never like the biggest or like the hottest band in our like sphere, and I think that it offers us longevity, and still like retains power within like that album and some of our other albums. And I don't know, it just I feel like it's better that way ultimately.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's kind of the dream, and like, I mean, or a dream, right? Like to just like, to have a record that just gets gradually bigger and bigger each year. Like so many bands are not that fortunate.
Absolutely, yeah, we're lucky.
And on that note, like, I mean, this kind of brings us into the new record a bit, but I think something I like about Citizen is, and I was kind of talking about something similar on our last podcast episode, which was with Justice from Angel Dust, how bands like Angel Dust and Ceremony, and I think this applies to Citizen too. It's almost like by the time people have caught up with what you did on your last record, you're making a different, unexpected departure on the new one. Would you agree that that's kind of, in the Citizen sort of way of being?
Yeah, and that's never intentional. It just, as time goes on and you develop new influences, it just kind of bleeds into whatever you're doing. So when we go to write songs, it's not how can we make this different or how can we make this surprising. It's what are we excited about and what do we want to do, and it always just, to me, I listen to any Citizen record and it sounds like Citizen to me, and I don't feel like there's much of a difference from record to record to record, and that's just because it's us as songwriters, and yeah, it's never intentional, but it's always the way it ends up being.
Yeah, it's like a haircut. It's like if you see somebody every day, you don't really notice how their hair is changing or whatever, and then you like go however long you see them for the first time, you're like, oh my god. And I feel like since we just live with all the songs for so long, it's like uh, it doesn't feel that drastic or whatever to us. And I think to probably to the frustration of many people, I think your point is correct that we do one thing, people start to kind of come around to it or whatever, and just when they are, we're like, all right, here's something else entirely. um, Probably frustrating, but to us it's fun, and I guess, I don't know, pissing people off is like kind of fun.
And I do feel like, it's ultimately like you're building this catalog though. Like instead of doing Youth Part 2 or whatever, like these are the, like you said the word longevity before, like these are the bands that have longevity, I think, where the big picture reveals itself over time, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also just think, it's like, even if we wanted to write youth or whatever, one, we really wouldn't be able to. It's like that was such a time and place that we couldn't recreate now. And two, the people that think that they would want that really wouldn't. You know what I mean? It's like that never goes like that when a band releases the same album twice. It's not, nobody's like happy about it ever.
Yeah, it would just be, oh, they're trying to do youth again and it's not working. That's what the reception would be.
Exactly. So I don't know. We just have to like plug away and still like try and make the closest thing to the sound we hear in our heads or whatever. It's kind of like the long game of like just writing like to finally get to that song that you just like feel, and probably never happens, but it's like that's it makes it a lot more fun to be in the band and to be playing music and not get totally burned out or desensitized from, I guess like industry things, like it feeling like a business. We just have to plug away at that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's that endless conundrum that, most artists face, right? Where it's like you're making art for the reason that artists make art, but then it becomes also commerce, and those two things, they're butt heads, I think.
It can be draining for sure.
And to your point about, like people think they want youth part two, but they don't. Like, this is a topic I talk and think about a lot. Like, there's a quote that Brian Fallon from the Gaslight Anthem said once that like really stuck with me, where he's like, if you make a different record that people don't want, they might be really upset. They might be like, this sucks. It's not what your last record sounded like. We don't want this. But they might come around to it in like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But if you keep churning out like a rehashed version of the record people love, there's no coming around to that. It's just something that like steadily burns out.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, and I think that Matt probably agrees with us, we have always felt like indifference is the worst reception we could receive. I would much rather people hate the music that we make, than to be indifferent about it. And that was a big thing around 2015 when we released Everybody's Going to Heaven. Um, it was just like a pure, this is going to be hot or cold. I have no idea if this is going to be embraced as like a welcomed, detour, or if people are going to be really upset. But I don't think a lot of people are going to be right up the middle and be like, eh. I think that people are going to really like it or hate it, and I think that was definitely the case, and that felt okay. I think definitely a lot better than people just being indifferent or maybe not even bothering to check it out or whatever, to even think about it. That's, to me, that's the worst kind of music, is something that feels lukewarm, that it doesn't engage my like thinking in any way.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I feel like that is kind of an antagonizing record. And, like if you're going to antagonize, then, you're going to expect like haters, but it's such I always respect when bands kind of, challenge their audience a bit like that and be like, maybe this isn't what you want, but like, it's what we want. And maybe and I think people have come around to that record, people who maybe weren't like ready for it, I think.
I definitely see the tides have turned quite a bit on the public perception of Everybody's Going to Heaven. So it paid off in the long run, I guess.
So going back to that kind of like, Citizen revealing its big picture over time theory, I feel like from my perspective, that really started to become clear on Life in Your Glass World. I feel like you kind of started to see people being like, oh, I think I get what they've always been building towards. I'm curious from your perspective, like how me saying that resonates.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's like the sample size is growing. It's like, okay, they released Youth. That was their first album. They're figuring it out. They did something totally different. And then As You Please, which is like, uh, I guess, a somewhat, it's not as antagonizing as Everybody's Going to Heaven,
I thought As You Please was a return to form for Citizen in a way. Just a little different, but still not a step back, but
and
return
and
to
I
form.
think and I think Glass World was kind of as much of a departure as Everybody's Going to Heaven was, and especially if you skip around the records, it's like going from Everybody's Going to Heaven to Glass World is kind of crazy. And I also just felt like we were so locked in. It's like I think everything that was happening, like everything that was being written was just, I don't know, it felt like exactly the right music to be making at the time, and especially coming out of the pandemic, it was like, I don't know, it just felt good. And I definitely see that record having a big group of like diehard fans that think that that's like the best. That's like the best one. And then there's people, of course, that can't stand it. And again, that's like, to me that's great. And I don't know. I really really love Glass World, and I don't know. It's almost sad that that era is like over now that we've started the new one. I'm like, man, I liked that. I like those songs, that album. And of course, when you go to another album, those songs just slip away a little bit. They're not as, you know, we don't play as many of them live or whatever. And I feel like I'm kind of mourning that, just because I like those songs so much.
Yeah, I think to your point about like, coming out of COVID, I mean, it's just this like loud, danceable record and people wanted to move again. And the timing was definitely right.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think that there's like a theme with bands in our world that, um, or maybe a perception that the bands in our world get softer as time goes on. And I think that was like, maybe not on purpose, but I feel like that was us like rebelling against that. Like, no, this is going to be big and faster and dancier and harder, and we're gonna have some evil tracks on here. And I don't know. I always am happy to rebel against that notion, or that expectation that uh, we're gonna make our like old man record or whatever.
And I mean, yeah, and I think that makes it spiritually similar in a way to like Everybody's Going to Heaven, because like that came out when everybody in the scene was like doing their shoegaze record. And yeah, it felt like we're actually getting darker and angrier and.
Which is so funny because people called it a shoegaze record.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Shoegaze was so popular that it was immediately just labeled one.
And it was decidedly not a shoegaze record. Sort of it was sort of an anti shoegaze record, because like you said, that was like every band was kind of going that path, and I felt like we did the opposite, and then they were just like, you're playing shoegaze. It's like, okay, all right.
I mean, at the risk of sounding pretentious, I feel like anyone calling that record shoegaze either doesn't know what shoegaze is or didn't listen to it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I'm also curious. You put out the song "Bash Out" the year after Glass World. which at this point is like one of my favorite Citizen songs. And I think in true Citizen fashion, I thought maybe it was foreshadowing the direction of the next record. Of course, it isn't. So now it's just like this cool kind of one-off. Can you tell me like the background story of that song?
Um, that song was, we were listening to a lot of Minutemen, kind of old punk stuff, and it was kind of just, what's like how stripped back can we make this, and how fast can we make it, and there wasn't like really a lot of thought in it at all. I did the initial demo and I sent it to everybody, and everybody loved it, and we all got together and figured it out and sorted it out and just recorded it immediately. And we're just like, oh, we might as well just put this out. So, yeah, no foreshadowing at all. And it was just kind of something fun we did. And it felt kind of cool to be in that position again. We had no plans with it or anything. It was just kind of like, oh, this is fun and cool, and this is different. And like, let's just put it out there and, move on.
Well, I'm crossing my fingers for like the Citizen Garage Punk record one day because so let's get to calling the dogs. So it's I think in again like it's a in a way it's again kind of an unexpected move because it's definitely not Glass World Part 2, but like I mentioned Angel Dust before, just to keep bringing them up. Matt, you sing on their new record. I feel like almost similar to that record. It's like another left turn, but also kind of a culmination of everything you've done. It feels kind of rewarding to the fans who have stuck with you through all these various eras, almost like you've been planting all these different seeds and now they've kind of like sprouted, and that's calling the dogs. That's my take. I'm curious to hear from your perspective.
Yeah,
I think. Sorry, you go for it, Matt.
And back to what I said earlier. It's just, we're evolving as music listeners always. So it is a culmination of every iteration of Citizen, just like every Citizen record was before, just mixed in with some new things we're excited about. And like when we were writing calling the dogs, it never was, how do we make this a left turn? It was just, oh, this song, we like this song, let's use it. We like this song, let's use it. We like this song, let's use it. And you don't really realize the transformation being taken place. But I think the fact that it's so organic and natural is what makes it good.
Yeah, and I think to the comment on it feeling like a culmination is like, again, the sample size just gets a little bigger, and you kind of see, oh, this is what Citizen sounds like. This is like, I can make out the playing and the singing, and like it feels like Citizen so much. But again, yeah, is another, like, I think we're offering a lot on this album that we never have before. And I mean, I love it, of course, but I don't know. It's like it's a again just another kind of shift, and feels like the right thing for us to be like making right now and at this point in our lives.
So give me some background on where your heads were at making this record, like some life experiences that informed it, some stuff you were listening to that maybe influenced the directions it takes.
Um, Nick and Mason always make me playlists with songs they're excited about, because I never, I should, but I never seek music out really. And, luckily I have them to do that for me. And maybe that's why I don't do it, because I know that Nick's probably just going to send me some new music I've never heard before pretty soon here. And so yeah, a lot of like, I guess, garage rock type things. I got really into the band The Cribs, and that was a big thing for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of the stuff that Mason and I get really excited about doesn't necessarily like make its way into the album, but it's like we're always listening to new things. And like honestly, the stuff I've been listening to lately is like so far from even what Calling the Dogs sounds like that it's like so hard to pin down whatever it is. But I don't know. I feel like Mason and I were just really excited about. I was really excited about like Eddie Current Suppression Ring, and even the Stones, and a lot of Mason. His heart lies with like early 2000s New York City shit, and so I don't know. I think you definitely hear that. I feel like that makes like perfect sense, and it's and then there are songs that I don't know. We were influenced by like Harvey Danger. It's like there's things in there that aren't even necessarily what we listen to. It's just like sometimes you write a song and it just feels right, and you know what it is, and you know its identity, and you're like, this is kind of the direction of this song. Let's take it one step further. Let's inject this with something that really gets us excited, even if that is just a sound or something. Could be a tone, could be a synth flourish or whatever. I don't know. It was just me and Mason, especially, were just like constantly sharing music and I don't know, gearing up and getting everybody excited about what this identity would be for the new era.
What else? You said there's a lot of stuff you're listening to that sounds nothing like Calling the Dogs. What else have you been listening to?
I mean, my favorite album of the year by far is Caroline Polachek. I mean, I almost feel like that's a boring answer because it's like so many people's favorite album of the year. I feel like, but uh, I've been listening to like the new Lauren Otter record. I really really like. Been listening to the new Strange Ranger record, which I think is amazing, and I want more people to hear it. And in their little world, Chanel Beads is a great band. And I'm always listening to old country, Webb Pierce and Patsy Cline, Jerry Jeff Walker. I don't know. It's always a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with Citizen, and in that way, Citizen sort of feels like a project. It's like we know what Citizen is and the general like boundaries or lack thereof, and it's kind of fun playing within that. And then I have what I listen to otherwise, and what Matt listens to otherwise. That maybe informs you in like a really deep way, but isn't like a direct influence. I don't know. I guess that's what makes you like the kind of songwriter, storyteller that you are. That Matt is.
Matt, what about you? Do you have a favorite album of the year so far?
Uh, honestly, no. I my whole year has been consumed by doing this new Citizen record and writing new stuff. So constantly just keeping the gears turning, and um, you know, I, I listen to things here and there, but for the most part, it's like I'm demoing, and then I go to the gym and I'm listening to the demo, thinking about what I could do better or what I should change. And yeah, I have been listening to the Strange Ranger record quite a bit. No, outside of that, um, I've been listening to Gazofelstein. I think that's how you say it. It's kind of like techno in a way, or dance music. It's tough, and I really like it. And that kind of stuff is, pumping me up as of late.
So Matt, tell me a little bit about like some of the like lyrical themes in this record. What were kind of some core ideas you brought to this, some messages you were maybe conveying?
You know, everything just kind of leads back to, your perception, of, your current state of mind and life lessons that you've learned. And I think every Citizen record, for the most part, is, pretty introspective, and it's always about a lot of the same situations, but maybe a little bit of a different, a different take on them, because as the years grow, you grow as a person, and, maybe you realize, oh, I'm the problem within that, and what could I have done better to fix it? And, it just touches on that, and it's a lot of self-realization and things like that.
What's the meaning behind the album title?
It's just a lyric from the song Dogs, and it actually just, it doesn't have some deep meaningful meaning at all. It just, the song is about, going ham with your bros, and it's just kind of fun and exciting.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a thing that categorizes this album in my head, as far as I separate it from the other albums, is I feel like this album is pretty tough. It's pretty hard, and honestly, when we were just like combing through and talking about the album and just having, conversations, I was like, I texted Matt, I think I said, "Calling the Dogs" album title. And he said, like, "That's hard," or "That's tough." And I knew I would get him. I know Matt's language, and I just knew that one was gonna fly.
It did. That from that moment on, that was the album title. And when it was, and when it came time to discuss options, it nothing mattered to me. It was just like, I don't even know why we're talking about this right now. I know what the album title is going to be.
Yeah, it had to be. It had to be. And it's always fun, when we go through this, like, major decision to name an album, listing them all out, so it was like Youth, everybody's gonna have an As You Please, Life in Your Glass World, Calling the Dogs. And I was like, that's perfect. It's nothing like the other ones in tone, or even just how it looks. um, it just had to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, Youth is like so much weight there, right? It's like your first record. It's literally a youthful record for so many reasons, and this is just like such a different vibe. It's funny, Like, I think it's
Yeah,
like, yeah.
absolutely.
Um, I also love that you did it with Rob Schnapp. I mean, obviously everyone loves Rob's work with Elliott Smith, but like I really love what comes out when Rob works with like a punk or emo band, like what he did with Saves the Day and Joyce Manor and Angel Dust. Um, what made you want to work with Rob, and what did he bring to the table that was new for Citizen?
I mean, honestly, he's just a legend. uh on top of that, having friends that have worked with him helped, uh, because you have some common ground, and you see that, okay, he knows how to work with bands from our general sphere. I'm definitely a big Elliott Smith fan, and we love um, the work he did with Tokyo Police Club, and the Garden. And it's, I don't know, he's done so many things in so many different styles, and I mean, God, that's like a citizen dream, right? And so, yeah, he was a name in the hat early on, and we had a conversation with him, and we were just like laughing on the phone for an hour, and yeah, it felt like the right vibe.
It's also your first record recorded with Mason and Ben on drums, who you've been touring with. How did having this new lineup in the studio affect things?
It definitely made the process slower because we're not. I feel like Citizen is such a, at least me, Nick, and Eric, we're a fine tuned machine. We know the process, and we've had a process for so long. And introducing two new people that we've never worked with before was a bit of a learning curve, and that's not a bad thing whatsoever. But um, it was cool because they brought a lot of ideas to the table that we otherwise wouldn't have explored, and we had to learn to trust in each other, and it was cool, and I think it ended up being really cool because of it.
Yeah, it just offers a different voice, and that's exciting for a band that's been around as long as we have. Um, it's like you don't often have that. It's like voices start to um, dissipate and kind of get rustier as time goes on with many artists, and we have the opportunity of adding two of our very good friends into the band, making music with them, having their insight and their input. And I don't know, I think that's kind of exactly what we needed right now, just to I don't know, have fun, I guess. Like, it's just straight up more fun when you have uh, more people that are invested in what we're all doing together.
And I would have to imagine that, working with Rob would be a little bit of that too. I mean, you did multiple records with Will Yip. I think you self-produced Glass World, right?
Yep.
Hmm.
How does Rob compare to being in the studio with Will versus self-producing?
Rob is really into guitars. He's a guitar guy, and Will is a drum guy, song structure guy. Um, I'm self-producing. I'm kind of just we're all the all-in-one package. But working with Rob was really cool because it was all about commitments. Um, if you recorded something there, that's how it was going to sound. There was no editing or changing. It was, hey, let's get this to sound as best as we can, mic'd up with no effects or anything on it, and let's commit to that. And I think that created a really cool personality on the record.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like you said, it's a tough record, but it's got these really warm tones a lot of the time. I think.
Yeah, Rob's is a like an outboard guy. So you're recording. It's not you're not recording straight into your computer and using plugins. He's dialing everything in by hand and using his board, and that the saturation of all that analog gear, really, you can really hear that within the record.
So you've got a tour coming up. It's with Narrowhead and Modern Color on all dates, and then Cryo Geyser, if I'm saying that correctly, Spine, Onionism, Lucy, aka Cooper B. Handy. Tell me about. Did you handpick the lineup? Tell me about this lineup.
Yeah. Yeah, we always do. We care a lot about our tours in the same way that we care about the albums, each one playing a very specific role. And for us, like the big first tour that accompanies an album is so important to us, and how it represents and kind of colors the era, I guess. And I feel like we just thought about energy uh, going into like what bands seemed to be the right fit, and Narrowhead and Modern Color were just like, it's like, of course, and I think with any tour, the goal is like, how do we give people something that they're like, that's stacked, from front to back. I care about this, and I'm excited about this, and not have it feel so traditionally tiered, you know. And so that was just like a no brainer, and we're always lucky when the bands that we want say yes. Um, and then as far as the other openers, that's always fun when we get a chance to add like special guests to anything, because you can really just go wild and be, I guess, creative in a sense. It's like, um, you have the opportunity to color the shows in a way that maybe you can't like fully do with just like a 2-3 band lineup. Um, so having, you know, Lucy and Cryo Geyser and Spine and Onionism, it's like that's just adding to that. It's just giving it a little more color and a little more energy, or a little different energy, to these shows. And I don't know. It's fun. It's like, again, we view Citizen like a project, and I feel like that's a project in itself, to just kind of be as out there as we can. You know,
Yeah, and it's cool that it's, fairly musically diverse.
absolutely. I think that is always important to us.
Any other bands that have been exciting you lately that either you've played with or would love to play with?
I mean, definitely want to play with Strange Ranger when we get the opportunity. Um, would love to play with Girl Puppy. Um, there's honestly, the list is kind of endless, especially because we ask so many bands to do things, or at least flirt with them a little bit. And so, of course, not everybody always can, or maybe it's not exactly a part of their agenda, which is like totally understandable. Um, but yeah, there's so many bands. I mean, Snooper is another band that I would love for Citizen to play with at some point in this cycle. It just seems to make sense. Um, and yeah, like I said, the list is endless.
I'm excited for the tour because I feel like, I mean, I guess I kind of said it when we talk about the youth show, but I just feel like you guys have really been bringing it lately. Like coming out of COVID, like the Turnstile tour, the Joyce Manor tour, like it just feels like Citizens really been going hard these past couple of years, and I'm excited to see that keeps coming.
I think, our um, mortality faces us directly, and we're just like, while we can, like, let's do this, like, let's do it for real, and do as much as we can, play to as many people as possible, because we won't always have this, and at least for me, I'm like, I'm a young man still, like, I want to go hard while I'm interested and while I'm passionate, and then if we don't feel that way, we won't, um, so it's just about capturing that moment and that feeling, and just turning it up to 11 while you still can,
Yeah, totally. Um, it was very sick to see, especially on the Turnstile tour. I mean, that they were, you went out with them and they were supporting what's now like the biggest album to ever come from like the modern punk scene. What are some takeaways on your end from that tour? What was your experience like? Anything that you learned or?
I think that it I mean, it kicked our asses in the sense that you have to up your game, right? This is a band at the peak of their like performance, and uh, it's just a challenge to us. Like, okay, you have to you have to come before this, and you have to do right by it, and then also go forward after this with those thoughts in mind, and how to engage with the crowd in a way that doesn't feel like, you know, a pop artist or whatever. It's like learning how to engage in a mindful, you know, kind of punk spirit, um, but still giving people like, you know, some sort of night that they can remember that will be like special to them. Um, I think Turnstile made us think about that a lot, you know, about just how to I guess go hard, you know,
Yeah,
and
it's inspiring for
yeah,
sure.
and just turn it up a little bit.
It kind of lit a fire under us, and we were like, oh, you know, there are so many things we could do better, and a lot of things that we otherwise, you know, would have thought to be, you know, considered not, you know, not us or not cool or whatever. It's like, oh, we can just do so much more, and why wouldn't we?
Yep.
I also think it's cool. I mean, you know, I think Citizens always had like a place in the hardcore scene, and I certainly what I'm about to say, I do not mean this in any way of like I'm not saying in any sort of cynical way, but I think with like, you know, Turnstile and just hardcore having this moment now, I feel like it's been cool to kind of see you guys like embrace that side a bit. Like you did that tour and you had Fiddlehead on the youth shows and you were on like the Triple B comp a couple of years ago. Um, Tell me a little bit about, I mean, you're obviously not what most people would be like Citizens on a hardcore band, I don't think, but you know, kind of having a foot in that world during this really exciting moment for it. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
Um, Honestly, in our area, that's just like what we have. You know, we have a hardcore scene. We don't have an indie rock scene. We don't have a rock scene. You know, I mean, we do to some extent, but you know, hardcore is so prevalent both in Toledo and Detroit, and we just always grew up playing with hardcore bands, and it wasn't weird in any way to us. You know, our Toledo shows were almost always with hardcore bands, and I think because of that, it's just like then we meet a lot of people within hardcore. Most of the shows we go to are hardcore shows, and you know, I don't care if anyone ever thinks whatever Citizen is, I guess, doesn't belong in that world or whatever, because it's like, well, we just are in that world, you know, and that is who we are, and that's what we do. And we of course expand beyond that, but it's like that's just the friends we have, and that's the places we've been and the environment we've grown up around. And you know, we've been going to hardcore shows since we were 12, you know. So it's just, I guess, within us to some extent. And no matter if we're no matter what style we're playing or whatever, um, it's like that just is reality for us, and that's just who we are and what we do, you know.
Are there any bands in this kind of new crop of hardcore bands that have been kind of coming up lately that's like really exciting to you?
Missing Link is a band I really like.
Yeah, I think this is, I guess, good timing, but the new Pain of Truth record is amazing, and of course, it's like, I think easily I think the uh, kind of biggest hardcore record right now, and it's really fucking good. But yeah, that's my input.
So Matt, post COVID, you especially have been like really prolific. I mean, you like between Glass World and Calling the Dogs, and you had 2 solo records in the past year. What's got you so inspired and writing so much lately?
I moved to Virginia and temporarily. I moved back to Ohio next year, but I don't have any friends out here, and I don't have. I mean, I just truly have nothing to do, and that has translated to me just writing a ton of music. And I mean, it used to take a lot to write a song, in the sense that like I had to, just feel totally right about it. Like, oh, I can write a song right now, and it would just happen. But most of the time, I just couldn't. I could mess around and nothing would feel good to me, and nothing would ever happen. So I had this process for the longest time where like I can't really describe it, but I would just wake up and I would be like, I think I can write a song today. And then those were the days I would write songs, or a song. And that would come in spurts. There would be a week and I would just hammer out, 10 songs. And then I wouldn't have the motivation or inspiration to write another song for a year or whatever. But ever since I came here, I've just had so much time, and I feel like I can just sit down and just bust things out. I feel, constantly inspired, and I don't know if that comes from boredom or I buy a lot of music things to keep me excited, keyboards and record like compressors and things to play around with. And, that keeps me excited too. And I feel like, just being in a new place with nothing to really do besides music has just, I mean, I think I've written probably close to 50 songs in the last 2.5 years, 3 years or whatever, which is, I don't know, close to as many songs as I've written in the past 15 years. So,
Yeah, that's a lot.
yeah, it feels good.
Awesome. I know people always ask stuff like this, but how do you kind of differentiate like if a song is a solo song versus citizen song?
I think there's like a light, more of a lighthearted vibe to the solo stuff than there is Citizen stuff. And Citizen is inherently pretty angsty and more energetic. And it's not hard to decide, and the two never really get mixed up. Um, I know some people, will say as Citizen, um, you know, screams less. They kind of compare the two a little more, but the vibe it comes from a different place in your heart. So
Well, before we go, anything else that you guys want to add? Anything to shout out or plug?
Just want to shout out Calling the Dogs. It's out October 6th. God, it's only weeks away, which is so crazy.
it is
Um,
nuts.
but yeah, I want to shout out that and shout out Rudy's Hot Dog in Toledo, Ohio, for no reason in particular, just because I'm hungry right now.
We're doing a lot of overseas touring next year, so plant that in people's ears. A lot of things to be announced, and it'll be our first time, our first time back in a lot of places in a long time. So we're excited. So hopefully people come out.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, Matt, Nick, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
thanks
having us.
for having us.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. Thanks again to Matt and Nick. Check out Calling the Dogs when it comes out October 6th on Run for Cover Records. And remember, you can pick up the Brooklyn Vegan exclusive vinyl variant in the BV shop. And catch Citizen on tour beginning October 18th in Indianapolis, right before they play When We Were Young festival. And they've got dates continuing through 2024. So, like I said in the episode, they are really bringing it lately. So don't miss them if you get the chance. And again, if you like what you hear, just give us a good rating, tell your friends about us. Any little thing like that goes a long way. So thanks so much. See you next time.